The future of music.
The future of music. The future of music.
The future of music.
The future of music.
The Future of Music podcast.
That's good. All right, we are here, and I'm so excited. I have like my best friends in the world hanging out right now, and we are really excited to be here. Jonathan, my good friend, how have you been? First of all, it's good to see you, and we've got a man hiding down there too. We'll introduce Brock here very soon, obviously.
Yeah, I'm
but
good,
yeah,
but
how have you been?
I'm good. But Brock, the important man, is that's the important one down there. So that's what we need to be talking about.
I know he looks important too. I mean, for anybody that's listening, how would you describe Brock right now? How would you describe him, John?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I think we talked about this a little bit before, but the shirt that he's wearing is really nice. I actually had the same shirt when I was, I think I was 4 years old, and we took a family picture with a nice autumn background. So it's nice. It's nice, Brock.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brock, I would say Brock, we've known Brock, or I've known Brock for a few years now, and master of so many different, if there's something to know about Brock, somehow he knows about it, and he's already been dabbling with it or playing with it, or he knows somebody who's been doing it. It's pretty remarkable, actually. I don't know how the heck you have time to do all that stuff, Brock, but I'm sure we'll hear about it.
He doesn't. He just doesn't sleep. That's all it is. I think he's always awake. He's using some kind of like biohack to just be awake. It's probably like the power naps, like Kramer and Seinfeld. That's probably what it is. 20-minute naps in increments. But yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I love the shirt. Also, I have to ask the question before we continue here, John. You mentioned you wore it for family photos. Was it an actual autumn background, or was it the Sears backdrop autumn background?
Absolutely the backdrop.
Perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
Good. We should start using those back here as well.
should.
I'm really excited. Yeah, let's kind of start to roll in. First of all, welcome to everybody listening and watching as well. We are basically here to start understanding where we're going with everything, all of these massive changes that are happening in really the music space with technology, gear, all of the AI that's just like being thrown at us right now, not just from a music standpoint, but everything. I mean, we were just talking about Photoshop beta and generative AI fill abilities and using AI voice and video, and just it's insane all over the place. But in music, it's also impacting quite a bit. So we want to make sure that we are really diving deep into those topics to understand kind of what's going on now. But then also even further, what's coming down the line? What should we be expecting and anticipating? And as you said, John, Brock is kind of the guy to ask and start to have that conversation. I know Brock personally, and I feel like it's weird to intro somebody that I consider such a friend, but then realize how professional and like amazing you are at the stuff you do. VP of marketing, right? Let alone music professional. When I say music professional, I think it was something like over a decade of experience. And you toured with people like Casting Crowns and Bon Jovi. This is like new for me to know as well. I didn't even know that about you. I knew you did the music thing, but of course, now I'm even more impressed. And right now, you're just simply able to contribute your music talents to projects while you're in Nashville, songwriting, recording, all of that stuff. But your current venture right now is this customsongshop.com. And that's a platform where consumers just purchase personalized songs. And you're actually in Nashville, so you're able to have those created by songwriters, Grammy Award winners. And it's pretty impressive to see the growth that you're having with all of that stuff. But obviously it took a lot of building and searching and researching and learning to understand how that even happens, how to make that happen. Let alone, man, you are really well known in our space for marketing strategy, specifically for like artists launching music, everything. I mean, I think the tagline I wrote down was that you are like a force in the intersection of music, marketing, and commerce. So with that fancy introduction, Brock, welcome to the show here. We are really happy to have you. And I think, John, what do you think? I think we know Brock, but the viewers don't know the amazingness that is Brock potentially at this point.
Yeah. So I think, Brock, if you can just, first of all, for everybody listening, this is Brock Douglas. And I think, Brock, if you can take us back to the beginning of kind of like your music journey, because when you say, you played with Bon Jovi and you played with all these folks, what you really mean is the extent, just so everybody understands the extent of your music experience and your music career, basically. I think you told me one time you were playing like 200 shows a year for like 11 years or something like that. So what I'm trying to get at is you've been in the music industry, making albums, making records, making music videos, all that kind of stuff. So can you take us back to before all that happened, and how did you start, and then how did you get to the point where you actually playing music professionally?
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. It's like great seeing your faces and hearing your voices. And yes, this is actually the shirt that I wore in our autumn pictures. So
Perfect.
full
That's
circle.
awesome.
Right? So yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, you guys flatter me. All started with a boy with a dream. To be completely honest. Like honestly, my earliest memory of like being interested in music, my dad had a buddy who was a harmonica player, and he bought us all harmonicas, and I started learning it, and actually like was able to be comfortable playing the thing, and fell in love with Michael Jackson at a young age, and in the late 80s, early 90s, and all that stuff. But like my music journey really started, it was 1997. I was in 5th grade. Actually, I was in 3rd grade and 2 years earlier, but I remember watching the movie That Thing You Do. And
Mhm.
even if you've never seen that movie, if you're listening to this, I
Great
highly,
movie.
highly recommend watching it. It was like written, directed, co-starred by Tom Hanks. He even wrote some of the music in the movie, and it's about this band whose drummer broke his arm, so they got a local drummer to fill in. Their drummer played the songs too fast, which made the songs better, and it was their journey of like touring the country, becoming a touring musicians, and like the journey, like the ups and downs of all of that, like what that touring life could be. And it was a very wholesome movie for the most part.
Mhm.
And I fell in love with that idea of being a musician, being in a band, touring the country, playing on stage, and like that was it for me. Like 2 years later, in 1997, my mom got me a drum set. Uh, and I started garage bands and got all of my local neighbors to pick up instruments and play with me, and that's kind of like the start of it. And I would say in middle school, started listening to punk rock, MXPX particularly. A friend brought me to a concert, started listening to some MXPX, Slick Shoes, Pennywise, all that good stuff. Less Than Jake,
Mm.
some ska music. So I started my very first real band, um, where I was the lead singer actually. And our bass player quit. I picked up bass because MXPX, my career was a bass player, the lead singer bass player. I was like, I could do this. Ended up getting our first gig, but I didn't know any songs. We just like would just randomly jam on music. So I got a buddy of mine who joined the band to sing the songs for this conference that we were playing at, like a high school local church conference or something. And then we just, man, we it was our thing for all of high school. I never had a backup plan. If someone's like, what are you going to do when you get older, when you graduate high school? I'm like, I'm play music. That's it. Never had a backup plan. We would play all the talent shows at school with our couple of songs that we wrote that were pretty decent songs, and um, had some people who really believed in us. Some of the parents of the band members put some money behind us, and we hopped on the road. Well, let me digress a little bit. My freshman year of college, I was going to a local community college in Tampa Bay, and we there was Bon Jovi had a contest for their Have a Nice Day tour, and he was kind of throwing a throwback to when they had their first big break. I think it was somebody like Howard Stern or somebody locked the studio doors and played their song over and over and over again all day. So they're like, okay, well, someone gave us our first big break. Let's give the opportunity for local bands to open up for us in all the local markets. So for the Have a Nice Day tour, they went and let all the radio stations decide how to uh, pick the opening act. Right? No, there's no support
Mm.
act except for the local band. And so we entered the contest. This is the power of email marketing. We emailed every single person that was in our email lists, and asked them to go vote for us. We got 40% of the votes. That Wednesday, we found out that Friday we'll be opening up for him. front of 18,000 people at the St. Pete
Wow.
Times Forum. It was the Ice Palace then, but St. Pete Times Forum, that where they play hockey. It was incredible. That kind of launched our career. People were calling us from all over the country to come play their events, and so we got on the road, and we were doing 150 to 200 shows a year for 11 to 12 years. It was
Wow.
pretty fun.
That's amazing. So a couple of questions. First of all, what was the name of the band? And second, well, go ahead. What was the name of the band?
No, the band was called Among the Thirsty. Yeah.
Among the Thirsty. Okay.
Yeah.
And at that time, tell us kind of what years this was. What was the decade here we were talking about?
It was about 2005 to 2017, 2018, around that. Yeah.
Okay, so fairly recently, the last part of it. But when that whole thing was starting, and when you guys were starting to, you said you were getting phone calls, and obviously you were starting to do some recording, and you're doing touring. How did the whole scene work back then? Like, what was the thing? What did you do as a band to get your name out there? To play shows? How do you connect with people? What was the thing?
Yeah, well, on the local side, we never broke the local market. Like, there's some bands that all they do is play local bars, local clubs, local festivals, all that. That was never something we were really great at. Like, local. Sometimes you can get stuck in that market, and so we were blessed that we didn't have, like, that wasn't our case. There's pros and cons to both, right? Like, it would be great to come home and play big shows to our home crowd. But it wasn't until later that actually started happening, when we actually started getting like national notoriety and getting on radio and all that stuff. It was a lot of, well, I'll say locally. It was some friends we heard about. Friend's mom was doing a concert in the park at some kind of beach or something, one of those types of things. But we had a guy. His name was Mike Terza. He was a bulldog, is what we called him, from Long Island, New York. Rolled up his sleeves. He played in his band used to play with Journey and those types of bands in Long Island when they first got it started. And so he would pull up a list of every venue in the country on the path that we were going. So, like, our first tour, we got a phone call from a place in Las Vegas that wanted us to play for them. So he's like, well, let's make a tour out of it. And so he would look at, okay, let's go up to upstate New York and then go across the country and then make it down to Las Vegas for the show. And so our first tour, we were gone for 2.5 months during the summer, because he was just calling every single venue saying, we'll play for a place to stay and pizza, basically, right? And so, we would sleep on the floor of clubs, youth groups, whatever it was. But it was literally him picking up the phone and saying, we will play for free. Just let us sell merch. And the amount of merch that we sold paid for our entire tour. We probably, stayed at too many hotels on that first tour than we needed to. But at the end of the tour, we ended up breaking even. We lost an engine of our Ford Expedition. We had to replace the engine. That really did it. But we did, at the end of the tour, like, dead even. We made $0, but lost $0. But it was really like, I would say if you were to start, 15 years ago, that was the way to do it. MapQuest directions. There's no GPS. printing off MapQuest directions and calling venues begging to say, oh, we'll open up for you for free. We don't need anything. We'll just play. Let us set up a table and merch.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, I think all of us have been a part of touring, obviously, back in the day. I think I'm a little too old at this point, feeling, to be able to do it, because it's intense sometimes. Like, I remember those times where we did like East Coast tours, and it wasn't much, but we would just go all the way from New York down to Florida and then back. And at the end of it, you're like, man, the van stinks. Like, we stink. This is terrible. But it's how you had to do it a lot of times back in the day. Now, I mean, we're going to talk about all the current stuff, but now there are people that literally play their first shows in front of tens of thousands of fans that they've accumulated, not playing shows, just being on social media. So it's such a different world anymore. But touring was dirty. It was not glamorous. At least when we called ourselves road dogs. I think anyone that's like on the road a lot, that's the term you use, a road dog, because it's a dirty business. You're sleeping on floors. You're eating pizza. It's a lot of fast food. It's not glamorous, but like
our manager used to encourage us like, hey man, you guys are up on stage. 75% of the people that are in this room wish they were on stage doing the thing you're doing. Right. Like we've had all three of us had experience in music industry. Like we know that there is like you pick up the guitar for a reason. I mean, a lot of it's just I want to, play music and enjoy the sounds and stuff. But sometimes you kind of just want to get on stage and experience that. And that was my life. And like I live it feels like I live a different life now, and that was a completely different life. I feel like I tell my wife, like, I feel like I've lived 3 lifetimes so far, like before the band, during the band, and after the band, because it's nothing compares to that experience. Like I've been to 46 states. I played in Australia. I've you know I've done it. I played in front of, I think our largest crowd was 100,000 people. It was a 4th of July, festival on a farm. It was hot and sweaty, but it was like you get off stage and it's there's nothing that compares to it. I miss it. I'll be completely honest. I do miss being on stage, but I'm doing things that I love and enjoy now, and I get to spend time with my family, which is one of those things I missed out a ton on. So I'm thankful that there's that season where I got to do it and do it really hard, and now I get to reminisce on all those good times.
Yeah.
That nostalgia.
Yeah.
Before we move on and kind of fast forward, can you fill us in a little bit more on 2 things? Number one, at that time you talked about the nature of touring. What did you do as a band? What did you do to start getting yourself out there, etc.? Can you talk a little bit about what was the recording process like in general then? Like, what did you do? Where would you go? What would you use? How would you do it, etc.? And then also, what's the point? I know most musicians, you want to make it, or they want to get somewhere, or be famous, or whatever it is, just make it as a musician. But when you consider like actually making money doing that to continue to do it, what was the actual goal with that side of things? What was on a day-to-day basis? We know that musicians write songs, they record stuff, but what do you do with that? And at that time, what was the actual the method of trying to make it?
Sorry, the first question was
Recording. What was recording
okay.
like, and then what was the trying to make it like?
Yeah. So recording, we started like right at when like digital recording was first coming out. I mean, I remember in high school I was playing around with Cubase and Reason and some of those other things, but not all the studios really had it. So I think our first studio that we recorded in, it was like analog with a little bit of digital stuff involved. It was like a little bit of both. It was really interesting. They weren't recording the tape, but they were using like analog board going into digital. And so it was step recording. I mean, we were recording one track at a time, which, at that time it was very controversial. It's a lot of people were like, no, you have to have the whole band in a room playing all at once. Right. And we weren't playing to a click. There wasn't a ton of auto tune or anything like that. I think as we started progressing, started playing with, recording with bigger producers, it was a lot more digital,
Mm.
ISO boosts, um, digital effects and things like that. We would probably record our scratch tracks all together. And then we'd go back through and then re-record our parts on top of that, or let the producer chop things up and then retrack. That was kind of the bulk of it. I mean, and I would say, we can get into this later, but one of those things where it's like now there is a lot of really phenomenal digital effects that sound authentic. When we were playing, you're playing with like a digital amp, or you're playing with like solid state amp or tube amp, right? There's a big difference, and you could tell the bands that were using solid state effects or tube effects, or digital effects, and there was a stark difference between those two things. And I remember like I played bass and drums in the band, and I remember like our guitar players, they were very much like, hey, we need that tube, that authentic analog sound. Like we don't want the digital sound. And
Mhm.
now it's like those same guys are playing on fully digital, pedals, and they're
Mhm.
they're not even showing up to gigs with pedals and amps anymore. It's just like
Mhm.
their laptop running effects. So it was very different, and I mean that's just that progress, that process that the music industry has gone through. I think it's touching everything. When it comes to the point of it all, for me, it was just to play music. I just loved playing music. I loved everything about music. I loved listening to music. I loved writing, recording, like collaborating with a bunch of guys who have the same passion, which is one of the things that would help us be successful. Everyone had the same goal, like let's just make a career out of this. I don't think it was to be rich and famous. I'm sure that's was in the back of our minds, like, hey, we want to be the biggest band in the world, or at least in our genre industry. But for us, it was just like, let's play and have fun and see if we can make a living out of this. We weren't trying to go for awards or, all that. I think the things that got us excited was the first time we were sitting in a Chick-fil-A parking lot and we heard our song on the radio. That was pretty exciting. Opening up for Bon Jovi, that was pretty exciting. Getting on tour, um, having your song in the first time we picked up a Billboard chart and we saw our name on there, that was exciting. But those are things that that weren't even on our radar, because we were a fully indie band. We weren't labeled for a while, and so it was just like, let's just grind and have fun. Let's just make friends on the road. And we had the host homes that we'd stay at every now and again, and they would love us and feed us, and we just go to the next house, next tour, next venue. But yeah, that was, I don't know if there was a goal in mind other than let's make a career out of this.
Sure. And when it came to making a career out of it, like, let's get specific about what does that actually mean at that point in time. Even if your goal was just to just play music, obviously you had to eat, you had to pay for a place to stay, car, gas, all that kind of stuff. What did that look like? Was that selling merch? Was that selling albums? Where did the money come from?
The money came from merch. That was all it. Because we were road dogs, we were begging to just play anywhere. We
Mhm.
would sell a ton of merch. We would sell a ton of CDs, a ton of T-shirts. CDs were our bread and butter. And then when I got into the marketing side of things was when I realized, oh, like I can bundle a CD and a T-shirt and a poster and just tell people they're getting the poster for free and give some kind of discount. And we would sell even more. And so then it was just like a science project for me. Like, how can we sell more merch, because it's going to help us pay our bills and pay for gas and all these different things. So I was just like strategizing on all those different things. But yeah, it was selling merch. And then when we got on the radio and people started hearing our songs and were calling and trying to book us, well, then that's when the money started becoming good. For us, our first tour, we actually had to beg our manager, hey, can we get paid? Like, can we get like $50, maybe a show or something, or maybe a week, so we can like buy fast food? But it was like we had a band card, and the band card paid for everything,
Wow.
which is a way to do it. And then when we had to hire like a musician, like, oh, this dude's making a lot more than us. This is crazy. But it was when we got on the radio and we got on bigger tours that were like, oh, there's like a per diem. We're making $150 a show now. Like, I can take that money home and not need to wait tables or something when I'm home or something like that. So, but yeah, it was merch was the bread, the money maker. I talked to some bands and they're like, they don't have anything. They show up to shows and they just play. And
Mhm.
like, what do you want them to go? What do you want people to go home with? Like, they need to take something home to remember the experience. It's not even about like buying a CD so they can listen to it, because streaming was starting to come into play towards the end, or YouTube or radio. But it's like they want a memento to take home with them to remember this experience for the rest of their life. And that was T-shirts, posters, stickers. For us, it was slap bracelets were our big money maker. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, like $5 slap bracelets. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Never would have guessed.
slap bracelets.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously things are changing faster and faster. And that's, one of the reasons why we're all here talking. So you've given us an idea of, what does the process of being in a band look like, the music scene in general. I know it has a lot of different facets, but the music scene in general, how do you make money? I want to say back then, but really that wasn't that long ago, but things have changed so much. So I know we're going to talk about um, what's coming in the future, but let's bring us up to right now. And you mentioned the marketing side of things, and that's kind of how you one of the reasons why you are now kind of segueing into all these different AI tools and all this stuff that's available now. But before we kind of get into how things are changing at the moment and what's coming in the future, take us up to, let's say, I don't know, the last year, 2 years, maybe 3 years, but things have changed a lot. But let's say the last couple years. What do bands do? How has the whole game changed of being a musician, in the 2020s, so to speak?
Yeah, I would say that the So I work with a lot of musicians. Like I'm in Nashville, so I have a great proximity to that. But I'll say that the shift for musicians since the pandemic, since 2020, March of 2020, has been majority online. I would say that
Mhm.
from what I've been hearing from bands, they're not making money on the road like they used to. People aren't buying CDs. Not as many people are going out to shows. It's there's a big shift in that regard where you need your total presence to be online. But
Mm.
like there are so many tools that you can actually build really powerful communities online that you couldn't have done 15 years ago. Like
Mhm.
you had MySpace, right? You had Facebook, you had Facebook groups, but outside of that, the it was limited, right? And the reach was limited. But now there's audiences that you can completely own online. So some of the guys that I coach, I'm talking some big hip hop artists that I do some marketing for, and we sit on a call for an hour and we strategize like how should we um how can we get further reach in in the music industry? Well, it's posting on TikTok. TikTok is the easiest platform to gain new followers, but the problem is that a lot of these artists are taking their stuff that they might do like on a music video or something and just copy pasting it to TikTok, and then it's inauthentic to the platform. Um, Something with Facebook or Instagram where they're just copy and pasting things. Facebook, I would say Facebook. I think those you could post a music video on there, it'll do fine, right? It'll get some reach. People watch music videos on Facebook. They don't do that on TikTok. They want to
Mhm.
listen to music, but people go to TikTok to like discover new music, discover new things, and they want to be a part of a story that comes from TikTok. So if you look at the artists on TikTok that are really blowing up, it's the ones that are showing an experience that their music is causing through TikTok. So let me explain. Like, um, if someone's on TikTok and you see someone like, I wrote this song for my mom, watch her expression. And they play a song and the background is the mom's expression. That is what, like, watching her react to the song that was written about her is what people really care about on TikTok. It's not the, I wrote this song, look how awesome I am, watch me perform it. Nobody really wants to do that on TikTok, right? I think you can get away with that a little bit more on Instagram, but Instagram is more, it's always been aesthetic. And so the lifestyle side of music is really what helps grow content. So Instagram has always been lifestyle driven. So if you look at like the things that are blowing up on TikTok or Instagram, it's your song being able to be the background music of somebody else's life is what helps grow things on Instagram. And so I would say those, when it comes to social media, those are the things that are really growing those platforms. The other thing I would say is community. Like if I were to start all over, we played 150, 200 shows a year for 11 to 12 years. We don't have one email. We don't have one
Mm.
phone number of anybody in our audience, right? So we have a Facebook group. We get Spotify listeners still, but that's it. Like it's crazy to, as a marketer now, to think like we totally missed that bucket of people, right? When as an artist, if I were to release music, I'm releasing to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Spotify. I don't own any of those audience. I'm asking those platforms to let me put my music on there so that I could build up an audience, but I still don't own it. If they're following me on Instagram, they can cancel my Instagram account tomorrow and I
Mhm.
lose that bucket of people. But if I claim that phone number and email, well, now I own that traffic source. So when I release a new song, I can text everybody, I can email everybody, or I can pull them into like a Telegram or Discord chat and engage with them on a level that we couldn't have done 15 years ago. Like Facebook groups aren't the same. They wouldn't have been the same. I didn't want fans to follow me on Facebook because that was felt like it was too personal. But now it's like, no, I want you to follow me on Discord, or like let me text you guys every week and tell you about where we're at in the country and to look at the new song or new song release, or like pre-release of a song to a special select group of people that are following me. Like that's your fan club now. That's your street team, is the email and the text messaging that people are missing out on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny to hear all of that, first of all. And I can tell you from the perspective that I've been in the past, which is still attending a lot of shows, not playing shows anymore, but attending a lot. And being able to be blessed enough to go like backstage and hang out with some of the musicians that I've loved all my life, and to kind of have that conversation of this switch, which is like back in the day, I'd do a tour if I was really popular, a lot of cash in my pocket. I was making money from, the CD sales, everything. On top of that, all the way to now, when I'm talking to a lot of these artists who we all look at as like, man, that's the thing. That's the thing. That's what I want to be in life, because he's well off. Like, he's doing well with music. And you realize real quick, like, I think I make more money than him. Like, and I'm not making a massive amount of money. Like, I'm doing better financially than the guy that I've looked up to, being like, that's the dream. And then you realize, like, oh, like, it's changed that quickly to where they are not making money. I mean, streaming pays pennies, and like, it just doesn't work. So what I want to kind of ask you to expand on a bit is that what I feel like you're saying, and what I've seen, is that we went from being musicians, and that was the creativity, right? It was like, let me be creative in composing something, building a song, making a good hook, making it catchy, and focusing only on music, to where now it seems like we all have to be creative in other ways as well. So we have to tap into other forms of creativity, like storytelling, video creation, like all of that stuff. Yeah. How are you feeling towards, like, is that the case? Is that what you see? Like, we have to expand our creativity now in order to make it, quote unquote, as a musician, in terms of, like, it's not just about the music, it's about the video, it's about everything.
Yeah. And so I actually, to your previous point, I actually had a buddy, I would call him a mentor on tour, sat me down and said, if you want to have success in this industry, you have to do something else. You can't just solely focus on the music side. You have to, at least to get started, right? Until you hit it big, but you have to be a songwriter. You have to be a producer. You have to wait tables. You have to work, sing somewhere, right? You have to do something. And so that's why I was like, okay, let me get into marketing and like kind of really learn this side of things. And that's helped me fall in love with the marketing side of things. So I would say that the, sorry, your last question.
Expanding creativity. Do we have to become creative in other areas?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. Well, and that's the thing. As musicians, we are creatives naturally. Like, that's we're great, really great at expressing ourselves with our music. And so, where I see a lot of artists miss the mark is that they don't see it as a business. They just kind of see it as a hobby or something fun that they do. But when you really sit down and think of it as a business, and you look at like revenue numbers and like how can we automate what things that we've talked about, automate, delegate, or eliminate? Can you do that in the music industry? Absolutely. Can you do that in a band or as an artist? Absolutely. I don't think many artists do. So when it comes to, like, the current music state right now, if I were to take one thing that I would say is a log jam when it comes to creating music, when songwriting, I don't know if you guys have ever written songs, but when you do co-writing sessions here in Nashville, that is the number one rated write songs. All the big pop songs that are on the radio now are all co-writes with 4 to 5 to 7 people. There's people sitting in a room coming up with ideas. Well, one of the log jams, I have tons of songs that are unfinished because we're sitting in a room, 3-4 hours go by, and we're like, oh, man, we can't figure out this last verse. Well, like, talking about Chat GPT, automation, AI, like, you literally can say, okay, like, we're sitting in a room and saying, all right, we want this song to say this specific thing, but how do we get it to go from where we're at right now to saying that thing without saying it this way? Well, now we can sit down and say, hey, Chat GPT, I'm trying to write this song. I need 3 different options for this verse. This is what I have written so far. I need another verse. I wanted to say this message. Give me some ideas, right? And now we can say, okay, well, those are good ideas. Let's expound upon it, or we can just copy and paste. Like, those are things that I think that, we've had these conversations offline. Like, if AI at this point isn't part of your workflow in any business, I would say every business, it's there's not anything that it's going to not be able to touch, that you need to, you're going to be left behind. You're going to fall behind somehow. I was just listening to I'll stay on focus. I would say creativity, like, there's ways that as a business owner, musician, artist, which you're creating yourself a business, there needs to be some creativity outlets, and to fast track that creativity, I think is absolutely necessary. So open yourself up to opportunities, figure out how you can reach the audience from a stationary place, because you're not going to be touring as much. Is it communities? Is it social media? Is it creating your own channels, your own places to tag those people?
So I think before, we're about to, this is a perfect segue into talking about AI stuff and future tools that are becoming available that weren't even available last year, right? New things are becoming available every single day, every single month, et cetera, that can help us leverage whatever it is that we're trying to do. But before we dive off the deep end, because it's a super deep end, um, let's establish something. And I want to make sure I'm clear and everyone else listening is clear as well, Brock, that nowadays, well, maybe like the last year or a few years, the game has changed from what you described, going out there, doing a bunch of touring, doing it the old way, right? The old fashioned way, making great songs, going out there touring, building a fan base. Then it changed to, you're saying now that, especially after the whole pandemic thing, that you, as an artist, if you want to be an artist and if you want to do music for a living, you have to essentially create your own brand and figure out how to go out there on these different platforms and communicate with fans and all that kind of stuff. But you have to figure out a way to do all that stuff and generate revenue somehow. And that's essentially what you're saying, that is what you have to do nowadays in order to be an artist and survive on your own. Would you say that that's correct? Or
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that there part of that was true as an indie artist, right? You have to control your social media, you have to do all
Mhm.
those things. The problem is that when people get signed to a record label, if unless it's a major label where they're going to handle everything and they act as a bank, right? They're smaller labels, you still have to do a lot of that work. If you expect them to do all that for you just because you got signed and you've made it, then you're going to fall behind. Yeah, I think that you need to figure out ways that you are all like you can get closer and closer and closer to your target market, um, like digitally. Like, how can they feel like you're their absolute best friend? By utilizing these platforms, or figuring out the next thing and then and attacking it first, getting in there first.
okay, so what about the money side nowadays? If you are, let's say, sitting at your house, you're not going to go on tour, you're not going to sell merch on the road, at least. How do you do it nowadays? How do you sustain yourself as a musician?
Yeah, and so here's the thing: we all know that we don't really need record labels anymore. I think that's kind of understood. You don't really need a record label. For the most part, it's a bank. They have distribution channels. You would get signed to a label because you wanted your CD in all the bookstores. It's not necessary anymore. Like, that's
Mhm.
so what is the benefit? They have strategies and all that, but those things are pretty well laid out now. I would say if you want to make money now, it's Spotify playlist. It's getting on Spotify. It's getting on Apple Music. It's getting something to go viral. There are guys that all they do is they're writing hooks. They're writing hooks so they go viral on TikTok so they can make some revenue from that. It's getting people from TikTok, Instagram, Facebook to YouTube where they can monetize that traffic. Where there's
Mhm.
some guys that are making 5, 10K a month just from their YouTube ad revenue. And so it's not going to be the CD sales. It's going to be turning yourself into a brand, selling T-shirts, maybe selling, apparel, merch, coffee mugs, tumblers, beer steins. It's like turning yourself into a brand, turning yourself into, you know, the next, Walmart or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's,
And you talk about like the community side, right, as well. And I think I see that a lot too. I mean, I can't tell you how many Twitch musicians are out there, right? Patreon, like
Yeah,
all
exactly.
these different things that surround community so that they eventually get to a point where they're paying to be even closer to the artist.
Yeah.
And that's generating revenue as well. But it all needs to talk to each other, right? You need a lead from one to the other. So, strategy. You
They're
kind of
not going to
mentioned
discover
strategy.
they're not going to discover the Patreon on their own unless they deep dive into who you are. It's all a funnel. You're taking them from the sources you don't own and funneling them to the one the one you want them to take action on. And it's a little bit more than just listening to your songs and being a fan. It's a fan. We have to redefine what a fan really is to you. Is it someone that just casually listens to your music? Right? If you're not playing shows, it's not someone that goes out to shows or is buying tickets. It's someone that maybe it's a Patreon, or maybe they join your Discord channel, or maybe they watch you on Twitch or YouTube, or subscribe to you on YouTube. Like that's what a fan is these days. It's a little different than what it used to be.
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
super interesting. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the game has changed. I mean, it's completely different, right, than it used to be. It's almost flipped up completely upside down, where basically all of the musicians themselves, the artists themselves, if you learn about this stuff, then you actually have all the power to kind of decide your own destiny, so to speak. So that brings me to um, knowing that that's essentially the game, so to speak. How what is available now? How can we know we keep mentioning AI tools? So things like AI tools. There's other things, but specifically AI. What are some other strategies? What are some other tools? What are some other things that are available now and becoming more and more available, literally every week, that somebody can use to help them do all this stuff?
Well, let's jump back to the creativity process. There's some times where you want to sit down and write a song, but you are like you're not feeling it. You're like, oh man, I can't think of any ideas, or I keep playing the same riffs and hooks and licks and all that. There are software where you can say, hey, I want something like this mood or this genre or something that sounds like this type of artist. This is kind of what I'm feeling right now. And instead of playing their exact songs, you're going to give you ideas to start from, right? And so, if say you're just songwriter, that's on the top of my mind right now. If you're a songwriter and you want to write a song, you can start with a track that you did not create, that is open source, that is for fair use, that you can start from and then build on top of, and then kind of create your own product from. If you're a guitar player, man, the same thing. You could sit down and just you know write guitar parts all day to AI generated music within a few button clicks, and the costs on these things are dirt cheap. Like that's one of those things that's kind of mind blowing to me. Yeah, it's to think that we our access to music, or like you don't have to start a band with 4 or 5 different guys and then collaborate on stuff. You can already start with something that you've created artificially, right, generated, right? And so I think when it comes to the speed that AI and music is coming, it is going faster than we could have ever imagined. I think the fastest we've ever moved since this was Napster,
Mm.
when it just opened up the world to all the music in the world, right? Like that's kind of where we're at right now. There is endless possibilities. If you wanted to collaborate with John Lennon on a song, you can pull in John Lennon's voice, and pull in Beatles tracks that were never created and create your own version of them.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So this is talking about the creative side of music, and I actually have a slightly different question about that in a minute, which is about the expressiveness. And Ryan, please remember to remind me to talk about that, of expressiveness with music with AI tools. But so far, we've been talking a lot about how you as an artist can make it. So with these tools, how does that help you leverage the non-creative side of things, but the business side of things, the building communities, all the other stuff that you talked about before?
Yeah, well, so you could say, going back to ChatGPT, you can actually pull out a strategy. Say, hey, this is my genre. Where should I post my music? What
Mm.
kind of post schedule should I use? With the Auto GPT, you can connect it to your social media accounts and tell it to, hey, when is the best frequency of posting? What time of day uh, are my followers most active that I can post to? Going to the business side, I think there is, well, one of the benefits of AI moving so quickly is all these social platforms are actually starting to incorporate AI as well. And
Mhm.
so when it comes to creating the best taglines on your social media posts, the best hashtags to use, or a script on how to engage your audience without music, you just want to talk to them, you don't know what to say, but you have to say something because ChatGPT is giving you a schedule. Well, now you can say like, okay, what should I say today that's going to engage them or get them excited? Or if there's some artists that are introverts that aren't even good at speaking it, but they know they have to. Well, you can record your voice and then write out a script and then have it record. It'll dub your audio, your voice over the script, so you don't even have to get on camera or try to say things eloquently, right? You can just have you know, AI and automation do these types of things. Um, I would say, what is the best leverage that a musician could use outside of the creative side? I would say that it's It could be community management. It could be website development. There are AI tools that can build a website for you in a matter of minutes.
Mhm.
Um, Mapping out a tour schedule. Hey, what cities should we go to? What venues are available? Uh, you manage like what you would have normally hired a manager to do. You could honestly have AI and automation take these things over, and I think that would probably be like the ultimate goal. When I talk to new artists that are just getting started, I say the very first thing you need to do is get a manager who's well connected, and then get a booking agent. Well, I can anticipate that those things will be replaced by AI here soon.
Mm.
Like someone to send out a mean email to a promoter who is trying to stiff you on money, that can be done with AI. You know what I mean? Like, or a response. Someone emails you and you're getting too many fan letters in your email inbox because that's what people do. They email fan letters, maybe. But you could automate so that if anyone says, "Hey, I want you to play a show," it has an auto response in your email inbox. Or this is something I'm using currently. You could set a cold email sequence to every single venue in the country and have a personalized cold email going out to every venue or voicemail drop or phone call to say, "Hey, here's a new band," and send out your electronic press kit and tell them that you're going to be in town on this certain day and you're ready and you want to play for free as the opener for pizza and beer or something like that. Like legitimately, that is a strategy that I think would kill it if you want to get on the road and start touring again. Or to radio promoters, hey, there's a new track being dropped. Like you would have to hire a radio promoter for $5,000 a month to call up all of the stations and to send them your CD or MP3 for them to listen to decide. Well, now you can have and this is probably a really great business idea. I should probably keep this in my pocket, but I could create a digital AI radio promoter that will then reach out to create a persona and email and DM every single radio promoter and every radio station. I mean, that would be a gold mine. So someone can steal that, I guess.
Along with the fan letters in the email.
Yeah.
That's
fan letters.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So what you're saying is like it's kind of endless. I mean, like you just went on with new things you've never considered for like 5 minutes.
We're seriously at the beginning of it. Like
Mhm.
we're so far like at the bottom of the barrel, and it's still filling up, and it's going to start dumping on top of us like the types of things. But it's going to. Sorry, I don't know if I froze for a second, but the early adopters to these things are the ones that are going to have the best success. The reason Pandora blew up was not because they were the best. It's because Apple was coming out with their app store and they needed a music app, and a guy had an algorithm, so he threw something together and created Pandora. He was an
Hmm.
early adopter, and so he was first. He was first to market. And so I would say, there are people who got on TikTok and blew up early because they were the first musicians on TikTok figuring it out. You need to be the first musician on AI figuring it out. You need to figure out that thing that there's a hole in the market for, or that people are paying too much for, and then jump in and take advantage of it.
So, what about the people who, we all have a lot of, maybe if you play guitar, you might have guitar idols, but we all have music idols from, probably classic rock era, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, around there. And, those guys aren't exactly getting younger at this point. So, if you don't adapt and if you don't adopt a lot of these strategies that you're talking about, these new tools, the new way of doing things as an artist, what do you think is going to happen to those guys?
People are going to what's happening. What's going to happen is what's happening right now. People are going to take their voices and they're going to turn them into their own songs using their voices. Someone's already made a Paul McCartney AI where it's not a current Paul McCartney, his 70-year-old. It's the 20, 30-year-old Paul McCartney, and they're using that to write songs, right? They're doing that with Michael Jackson. They're doing that with all of our elders in the music industry. And so I would say for those guys that aren't utilizing or staying on top of it, right? They don't have the big teams like trying to figure out AI, which they're not. A lot of them aren't. They're trying to figure out how to prevent AI from taking over their jobs.
Mhm.
People are going to use their likeness and create better music that we could have never imagined Paul McCartney ever writing. Which
So
That's hard to imagine, right?
It is, and that brings up a really interesting question. That first, well, there's two things actually. First of all, I could see how, let's say, some musicians that are past their prime, maybe they can't keep up with all this technology stuff. They might be able to leverage that actually in some kind of a licensing deal or something where somebody can use their likeness, use their voice, etc., which might be one way, for them to continue. But here's another interesting thing, which is leading me to my last question for you, which is, things are changing so fast right now, and everything that you just said is completely new to everybody. All of the AI tools, what you can do, ChatGPT, etc. What about in 5 years from now? How are things going to be then? And one thing that came to mind as you were saying that is an interesting idea. What if now it's possible for that the musicians that we love, like Paul McCartney, for example, the Beatles, all the big bands, Led Zeppelin. What if people will start to use their likeness, their voices, their guitar styles, etc., and keep writing songs? So essentially, that those artists never die; they just continue on. You think that's could be a possibility? Are people doing that now? What does the next 5 years look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I saw, so going back to the Paul McCartney, I saw someone took one of his current songs and dubbed his younger voice on top of it, and removed his old voice, his 70-year-old voice, and it sounds phenomenal. It sounds like Paul McCartney was singing it, right? As young Paul McCartney, and I think, and it's going to go to Congress, right? You look at what happened with Napster. It's right now, it's the wild, wild west of AI. And so these guys who are the pure AI purists are trying to move as quickly as they can because they know it's coming. There's going to be a day of reckoning or whatever it may be. Their songs are already getting removed from YouTube, from Spotify. They're not being able to be streamed on some platforms because, say, Universal Music Group doesn't like it. So right now, I think that there's a licensing that's going to happen with some of these voices. Either the label owns the likeness to the singing voice, or the artist owns the likeness to the singing voice, because that's something that we never really thought about. Like, people can do impersonations, they can do parodies, but if someone is saying, I'm going to release a song and use Kanye West's voice, well, eventually Congress is going to say Kanye West needs royalties for his voice, because all of these AI models are trained on his voice and his songs. And so it's not there yet, but I personally think that's where it's going to go.
Yeah. I mean, I just real quick interjection. I think it's starting to happen already. I mean, I just saw a massive interview with Ice Cube, right? Which was him literally having to state on the record that if anybody regenerates my voice or writes with my voice and it's not me, I'll sue you. Like, he came out very adamantly, was like, you can't, you're not allowed. I'm just saying it for the record. But then it's like, that's not legal yet. Like, it's not,
yeah, exactly.
They could still do it. So there comes this gray area of like, he said it, but it's not legally the case. And then when do you start to be able to discern between that's really him, or like, is that AI? I can't tell. There's going to be this point of him. Like, what if it happens when he's like, man, that song's pretty good. That is me. That's me. That's
well. And so on the flip side, I forget her name right now. There's an artist who's doing the exact opposite, where she says, you can use my voice, I want 50%.
Grimes.
Yeah, Grimes, exactly. And so that is, I think there's
genius.
There's room for it, right? And that's probably where the industry is going to go, where it's going to be some kind of split between. There are going to be the guys who are just like jerks that are just like, no, you can't use it. I own the song now. I'm going to make the money off of it. Screw you. Or the industry is actually going to say, no, it's, you either get a licensing fee, we're going to sue you, get a licensing from us, then you can use the voice. But then there's like, they're going to have to put stipulations. You can't use the voice for this, for that. You can't, just like take a Christian singer like Dolly Parton and drop F-bombs on a hip hop record. Like that would, which might actually sound really awesome.
That'd be a banger. That'd be all right. Let's go. That'd be that song would just
whoever's listening to this, somebody take Dolly's voice and just put it into like
and
a
send it to
ram
us
machine or something.
Please send it to us. We want to hear
it. Yeah. Now, one thing too, I want to bring back as we're talking about AI and what's happening with it. John, you did want me to mention the
Mhm.
expressiveness of music with AI tools?
Yeah. So actually, I'm going to open another loop and say, before we get to that, I have one more question. So we talking about right now, like famous artists and owning something, owning some kind of, property, or having, let's say Grimes, for example. Yeah, sure. Use my voice, but just give me a cut of it. Right. What about the general musician who's not an already famous person, who's trying to make their own music? What can they do in this over the next 5 years? Let's say 3 to 5 years. What are they going to be doing? More of the same that they're already doing now? How is that going to change?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, like, I would, man, I would say it's the create. I think the creativity side is where the newer musician is really going to step out, because you can drop songs into AI and say, create me a track that sounds like your favorite artist, and then you can sing on top of that. You can play on top of that. I think there's room for that when it comes to a newer artist. The writing side, I think you can fast track actual songwriting with AI, and I think really for a songwriter, that's the secret weapon. If I had five guys sitting in a room and writing songs, they all had Chat
Mhm.
GPT open. I'm thinking we're getting song done in an hour instead of 5 hours. And then it's quicker to market. I think it's going to speed everything up from creation to production to release.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, like I say, as a new musician, a new artist, leverage it as much as you can in every single aspect that you can, and don't be afraid that if someone says, "Did you write this with Chat GPT?" I'd say just like, "Yeah." I mean, that's you like the song, right? You like my voice? Okay, cool. Let's keep rolling with it, man. Like,
Yeah, Dolly Parton, she was in it. Yeah. So on top of that, then, do you think it's also going to lend toward this idea of like quantity? So in other words, what I mean by that is, back in the day to write an entire record, so to speak, 12 songs, 13 songs, it'd be a months long process. And it was almost like once you got done, you're like, hope it's good, because it's going out. But it seems like as we shorten that length of delivery, it gives us two options. One, we just do it quickly and we're like, hopefully it works, and we get lazy. Or do you think it's better to do the opposite, which is like you can grind and hustle and get so much more content done, so much more out there to start touching new fans and new people to listen to your
yeah.
stuff?
Well, so here's the thing. I would say that the with music creation, well, writing a record is more like 30 to 40 songs, narrowed down to 10 to 12 songs.
Mhm.
But we are moving away from records. Records are going
Mhm.
to be, if people are still releasing records, they're wasting their time. It is singles. We've gone back to singles, right? That was like the 90s thing, right? You release a single to raise money for a record to promote the record, and then you drop the record with all the singles on it. I think we're going back to that. I think it's you can write a song today, Ryan, write, record it, sing it, drop it on Spotify, and it'll be on Spotify tomorrow. You're promoting that on TikTok, on YouTube, on your smart URLs and all those things. And then you send it to radio, right? So songs can be done in a matter of days. Even like the master. So this is one of those things that it's crazy. You're paying So when you record a record, it's the producer an engineer who record the song, someone completely separate mixes it, someone completely separate masters it, and those are added fees. So you're paying five to $25,000 for expertly recorded record. Then you're paying someone another $1,000 per song to mix it, and another $1,000 to master the song. Mastering is one of those things that, yes, you can get somebody on really amazing analog gear to master a record, but that is now being beaten out by AI. And to the untrained
Mhm.
ear, it sounds almost identical to what you're going to get. And
Mhm.
so that's one of those things where, yes, we're that the process from writing to getting a song live or even radio ready, which is different than just getting it on Spotify. Radio ready is getting shorter and shorter and shorter because of AI.
Yeah, and the craziest thing too, right now, I know we're talking future stuff, but like right now, a lot of those companies, a lot of the tech companies pushing out the AI, like the mastering techniques, um, it's just completely available because they want to master the actual technology before they're selling it or having you do it. I just yesterday, honestly, so random, tested out mastering technology with AI, and it was 100% free, just like ChatGPT, because they want to collect that data. Like they're like, feed me the data, and I'll get better and better and better, and then we'll charge people for this. But like, we live in a time right now where, as it's rolling out, you can find new platforms daily that are like stellar, and they're just like, please come on in, like we'll do it, and then we'll charge you $10 a month. Is that okay? You know, it's so inexpensive at this point, because it's just able to be done so easily now.
Yeah, whoever's first to market, man, that's what's going to work. So when people find the best mastering software and they pay $20 a song or $49 a month, like that's people. I mean, that's it. Those people are going to. It's going to be the Pandora gold mine because they were first.
Amazing.
Yeah. What's also interesting about all those tools as well is that the better they get, the more commoditized they get. So the price is going to go lower and lower and lower and lower. So people like any of us, anybody sitting in a bedroom, you're going to have access to all these world-class tools for literally dollars a month that you used to have to pay, for example, like mastering, Brock, thousands of dollars for one song, right? And it takes a lot of time. You have to go listen to the CD in your car. You have to listen to it in different areas and make sure it sounds good on the car, on the radio, on the headphones, or whatever.
That car test was the worst. All right, that car test is terrible. All right, it's so.
That was
sad.
the best one. That was the best one.
No, I'd walk out. I'd be like, nailed it. We got it. 4 hours of work. You go into the car and you're like, failure. It's miserable. This
sounds
sucks.
terrible. Yeah. Yeah. So the last question that I had, Ryan, that you just brought back up was, we're talking about all these tools that allow you to create stuff faster, easier, etc. Right? But if we go back to the original point of humans, like somebody picking up a musical instrument, you already mentioned earlier, Brock, that you just want to play music. You're passionate about it. You just like to get up on stage. You like to play, or you like to collaborate with people, etc. So what do you think about the idea that, yes, just because I can go to ChatGPT or wherever and it can tell me, here's 5 hooks for the song, here's a completely written song, here's a completely written album, just posted on YouTube. Well, at what point does it take away the expressiveness and the creativity that the person was originally looking for? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, and so that's a really great thought, because I think there are people that are writers writing books using ChatGPT. There's people that are making recipes using ChatGPT. I did that the other day. I made my kid's favorite fluffy pancakes are now from a ChatGPT recipe, and some of those things that I could have probably sat down and tweaked and modified. And it is. I mean, there's pros and cons to it. I think it's definitely dangerous when it comes to the creativity of like how we are naturally creative songwriters or musicians. It is definitely going to take away from that. I would say it's going to hurt songwriting. It's going to hurt the art of songwriting the most. I think it's going to help the musician a lot. It's unless you're telling it to write me a guitar part. I think I don't really foresee that happening very quickly. I could be completely off. I think the art of songwriting, or people really figuring it out, it's going to slow down that process. But the consumer is going to get a really great product. And what's the most important thing? Is it seeing the smile on someone's face when they listen to your record, or is it the smile on your face knowing that you created that without AI? I don't know. I don't know where that's at right now. I know for me, I would likely, if I was to do a songwriting session tomorrow, I would likely sit in my office with some songwriters. We would start with ideas. And I think for me, it would be like, dang, we're stuck on this thing. Let me get some ideas from handy dandy ChatGPT, and then let's keep moving forward. But like, the melody's not going to come from GPT. The nuances, like, there's still going to be some nuances, and like, okay, let's say it this way, or as we're like fumbling out words, we're going to get some ideas, and then maybe we hone it in with ChatGPT. But it's still really new. I think it's going to hurt. It's going to help and hurt. It's going to help the industry, the music industry as a whole. It's going to hurt the songwriter and creativity, and the guys that are really, really great wordsmiths may be kind of left behind unless they incorporate it. We'll see.
It's crazy. Yeah. I think the big thing for me that kind of goes along with that is it's up to the artist, right? what's your goal and where's your passion? I remember I got the opportunity to do a Q&A with Joe Satriani, like super fanboy of Joe Satriani. And I asked him, like, how do you get like super fast? Like, how do I get like this exercise from 150 BPM to 200 BPM? And I remember him straight up asking me and me feeling like a moron. He was just like, why? He's like, you think the audience is going to be impressed that you raced it 50 beats per minute? That's who I write for. That's where my thing is. So it's like his goal is the audience, like you said, not that he's up there like, man, I killed it, I nailed it there. He's like, they like the song. That's what I like to see. So do you think, I think in addition to this, we're talking about like 5 years, right? We've been talking about, do you think there's going to be this like cycle almost of like we start to go real deep and really heavy into AI and songs being created, produced in seconds? And do you think at some point there becomes this craving to bring back the individual element to where the people start going, I kind of want to get back to like just musicians being musicians? Do you think that's a possibility, or do you think we're just going to keep advancing? Or do you think we come back?
Well, so like look at like is it like the late 90s when things started getting really digital, techno, really processed. I think that there's going to be this really a hard push to like this. Hey, I made this whole song in Chat GPT and now it's on the radio. I think there's going to be something like that. And then I think it's only going to pull back a little bit to there's the human element and there's a balance between the two. Like, so now like it's like every song was recorded with natural drums. Then there was like this really hard techno thing. We pulled back and maybe they recorded drums and they sampled fake drums or digital drums on top or samples on top. And now if you're listening to most songs on the radio now today, there's not a drum kit in the studio at all. It's all programmed drums and they sound phenomenal. They sound incredible because the technology's caught up. But it, like if you see it went from all natural, all techno, pulled back to samples, and now it's back to authentic sounding fake drums, right? So maybe it's going to be something like that where it's no AI, all AI. Now there's a balance of like healthy. This is healthy for us, and then it's like, okay, well, everyone's doing it. Gen Z is now all the musicians, and they grew up with Chat GPT, so that's how they write songs.
Just to add an additional dimension to that as well, if we think about like classical music, for example, classical music is not contemporary. It's not, people aren't coming up with it right now. It's a hundreds of years old type thing, but there are still people who are classical music purists who love playing it, love listening to it, etc. And if we think about the entire music industry as a whole, if we just make a blanket statement about the whole thing, sure, the whole thing is going to move in a direction, but within that direction, there's all these little pockets of different people that are always going to exist. So, people right now, they like to buy records at the store, actual records, and listen to the records. Maybe they don't listen to an iPod or an iPad or an iPhone or anything with an I on it. They just listen to CDs. And I think there's always going to be different groups of people who gravitate toward those different things. So maybe it won't most of the little niches, I guess, of like, let's say the people who you were talking about drums. So the people who want to record only drums and specifically to only an analog board or something like that, people are still going to do that, but it's going to be less and less, over time. It is interesting to think about, well, what if in 50 years, what if about 100 years, how is that going to change? Of course, some of those people will become extinct essentially.
Well, let's talk about like the worst case scenario dystopian nightmare, and that is the major record labels owning a voice, having a room of writers write a song, and using AI to record the song, record the vocals for an artist instead of the artist even being involved. That's probably the worst case scenario, and I legitimately could see that going. I could see them mashing their favorite voices that they put through a panel of ideal listeners and saying, oh, I like this voice, and this voice, then blending them together to make one cohesive voice, and then writing songs by running a panel through 1,000 different listeners. Like, that's worst case scenario, but I 1,000% can see some major corporation, record label doing something like that.
But why wouldn't they do that? Because that's what they've always done. Now they just have more leverage. But also, how is that different from some dude sitting in their room now and using the same tools to come up with something like that they didn't write, that they didn't sing on, that they didn't whatever.
Yeah. But
Right,
then
yeah.
also on top of that, like you're saying, they don't have to pay anybody in that time, right? So
That's true.
they can potentially start creating their own non-existent artist that is just like, there's John Smith, enjoy, and he's a computer. It turns out like his live show is just a laptop that's
I
opened
mean, they
up.
did it with Milli Vanilli, right?
Yeah.
Like seriously, like if the label has the balls to do something like Manili Vanilli, is that you say it, Manili Vanilli? And they have the balls to do that, they're going to do it with somebody. They're going to do it with AI totally.
Of course.
Maybe they're listening
Yeah.
to this podcast and that we just gave them the idea.
Yeah.
Sorry,
We're
guys.
the creators of the end. We've
License it.
created
You
the
have to pay us.
end. Yeah.
This is how Terminator started.
Yeah.
CPU, neural net processor, all of it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Well, I think, I mean, we could just, like I said, this is the deep end for sure. And you can just keep diving and keep swimming for as long as you want to go, really. But I think it's really interesting to see that kind of arc. So Brock, you filling us in on real world experience by, how things quote used to be, not totally used to be as in like the heyday of rock music, that kind of thing, but how things have changed with the most recent acceleration of technology, going from all analog to then some digital stuff. And then now we're talking about AI and all this crazy stuff that can be happening. It's just really interesting to see, first of all, the changes and the different phases that we went through, but now what's going to be possible, what might be some of the things that we might want to be afraid of, etc. But yeah, I think going back to today, last question I would have for you, Brock, is what are you working on now?
Well, one of the things I have a few things in my back pocket when I'm talking about like the music industry. I have some ideas that I'm working. One of the things I can't disclose yet, but it's going to be a tech platform. I'm going to get musicians, songwriters, players involved, and kind of build some kind of community with that. The other thing is custom song shop. That's one of those projects that I'm actively working on, and we're trying to create a platform that you can. Consumers can have songs, and we're actually going to be AI friendly, where we're gonna let some of our songwriters, that they need to write a song, use AI to write a song, absolutely, because we want the absolute best product for these the consumers. And so basically, customsongshop.com is going to be a place where if you want to buy a song for your wife or girlfriend or husband, boyfriend, whatever, you can come to us. And we have Nashville-based songwriters, Grammy Award-winning songwriters who've written for. I mean, one of our current songwriters writes for the band Perry, right? It writes for has a song in the Twilight movie, right? And so that caliber of songwriters will be writing songs, but we're also going to be allow that to have a B2B aspect of that. So you want to write a song for this new business that you're launching. You need a jingle for a commercial. We're going to be able to provide something like that too with Nashville-based songwriters, and the accessibility to those songwriters is going to be the thing that we're going to be highlighting the songwriter as a person, not just a number. So you know exactly who they are, what their accolades are, and you can hire them through customsongshop.com. We're launching
awesome.
soon. It's not live yet. It'll be live soon.
And what was the URL again?
Customsongshop.com.
Custom Song Shop. That's awesome. Okay, cool. And also, if anybody wants to keep up with you personally, do you do the social media thing? Where are you at?
Yeah, I'm at Brock Douglas on all platforms: TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. You can follow me on Pinterest.
And is that Douglas with 2 S's or 1 S?
As 1 S, DOUGLAS. BROCKDOUGLAS. Yeah.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
We'll make sure. Go ahead.
I'll post my my fluffy pancake recipe on Pinterest if you follow me there.
That's good. And the flannel shirt purchase link. Yeah, we'll make sure we include all of that stuff in the show notes too, in case anybody needs that. So we'll make sure we put it there. But outside of that, Brock, you know what? We're going to do this as we always do every guest. Typically I think hosts are like closing thoughts. The topic, the conversation. What are the closing thoughts in leaving today and setting people in the right direction on the future of music and what it looks like? What are your closing thoughts and what's your advice on everything summarized?
Yeah, I would say that, we talked a lot about AI today, and I would say that, I do a lot of coaching for marketers, for coaches, authors, speakers, musicians, and I tell them this exact thing, that if you don't have AI in some part of your workflow, then you're going to be left behind. I'd say don't be afraid of the future. Just try to figure out how you can embrace it and add it in, even if it's just a small step. I honestly think that it's better to be an early adopter and get it wrong than to not use it and then be left behind. So
That's a quote right there. We'll pull that one out.
I'm going to put that. It's going to be really long, but I'll put it on a t-shirt. It'll it's going to be an entire paragraph just on a t-shirt. Maybe the sleeve only, really long and in 9-point font. That'll be good. Well, Brock, my friend, again, thank you for being here. Thanks for talking with us about Skynet and the future that is Cyberdyne Systems taking over all music. I'm really looking forward to it. Remember to save the arm and the chip. All right. That's all you need. Anyway, thank you, Brock, for being here. It's been wonderful chatting with you, John, as always. It's so good to hang out with you as well. And for everybody listening, thank you for listening. And also, we will see you next time.
See you.
peace.